All right, well, I guess we'll get started here. I'll try to keep it brief so that you can get to your lunch. My name is Josh Ennerkine. I'm here at Boise State in the BCAL lab with Nancy Glenn. And on behalf of the Idaho Lidar Consortium and sponsored by FEMA Region 10, we would like to present a brief overview of some LiDAR software. I did a day or two of research, so you didn't have to. So this presentation, I was hoping to serve as kind of a reference more than anything. It'll be recorded. Let me double check that real quick. Cool. And as a quick disclaimer, this is in no way an endorsement of any product or software by FEMA, BCAL, Boise State, or the Idaho Lidar Consortium. BCAL does have a tool that I'll talk about, but we don't make any money from it. So, diving right in. So, as I said, I sorted through a bunch of software so you didn't have to, and I tried to focus on talking here today about some of the big ones or geospatial focused software or free ones. And so we've talked a lot about LiDAR data in past webinars or done training in a specific piece of software, but we wanted to kind of show you what's out there and what the general capabilities and the pros and cons of these all are. So as much as I could, I tried to show the same data with software that I have access to. And so this is one tile out of 10,000 from this new data set that will be up on our Idaho Lidar website soon. And just for comparison's sake, it's about 572 megabytes and 20 million points. And so this is Shafer Butte right here. So you're all familiar with ESRI products, ArcMap and ArcPro. I would strongly recommend, as I'm sure you've heard 100 times by now, to switch to ArcPro if you have not already. Some of the advantages with specifically for LiDAR is it's already a familiar interface, either ArcMap or ArcPro. You probably already have the license and access to it. It's easy to combine multiple LiDAR files or types of data. I really appreciate the ability to go back and forth between the 2D raster type analysis or interface and this 3D scene all on the same piece of software. That's really slick. And the last D data set frame, I'm sure you're familiar with if you've used it, but where you set up a file and then you put last files in that file. So it has ArcPro is mostly what I'm showing here, and it has some great classification algorithms. It's got this neat feature proximity tool, which I haven't played with, but it looks neat. You can calculate some height metrics for vegetation, and it's overall really slick. One thing to note, it does not display all of the points when you load them in. So I'm sure this could be better, but as far as I could play with it, that's as good as I could make the point cloud look. So if you're trying to do visualizations for a presentation, maybe not the best. Some other cons I see is it's not free, obviously, and you cannot edit the points. So if you see points in error or you want to interactively select points or something, that's not a capability, at least from the documentation that I'm aware of. The last D thing can be kind of a headache sometimes, and from the little bit that I've worked with LiDAR data, it can still be sort of buggy. All right, ENVI LiDAR, moving along. ENVI is a remote sensing focused piece of software, and similar to ArcMap and ArcPro, it has a 2D raster window and then a 3D LiDAR viewer. And so when you open up a LiDAR data set, it pops up this window where you can kind of spin the point cloud around and look at it. It's pretty fast. It loads all of the points, which is good. And so now you can see that there's a chairlift here, which we couldn't see in ArcMap just because it didn't pick enough of those points to resolve that. So that's why I think that is important. Overall, the ENVI LiDAR tool is pretty straightforward, integrated with the raster analysis. You can control the parameters when you export a product like a DSM or the EM. It has feature extraction capabilities, but you have to pay extra for those. And you can annotate point clouds. So cons, not free, you need to pay the separate license. And it has limited analysis features compared to some other software, and it's not standalone. If you're already using other software and you just want a LiDAR piece of software, this would be maybe more than you would want. So you can set the boundary here, and then, oh no, animation is wrong. Anyway, get the idea. So ENVI LiDAR was actually built off of BCAL's ENVI LiDAR plugin, which was developed by one of our former graduate students. The ENVI BCAL LiDAR tools is free, it's open source, and it was designed for vegetation and semi-arid ecosystems, although it works great in forested areas as well. And so it's this series of modular tools that I'm showing the LiDAR viewer here. So you can kind of just use each of these tools. It has lots of control of parameters and fine points, and I think is fairly feature rich compared to the ESRI or ENVI products that we've talked about so far. So for example, you can just look at the LiDAR header information, or you can just look at the stats and see how many points are in each class. As far as features, these are all the tools. You might notice some of these are duplicates. I think it's because I messed up importing the extension, but you get the gist. You can calculate all these different features. So one of the cons, it requires ENVI, and it can be a little tricky to use. I mean, I guess you get what you pay for. When you use these tools, as a caveat, if you have ENVI and you're going to do this, it often asks you for the parameters, and then it just overwrites your file. So you have to kind of do a little folder structure to keep track. And then it doesn't display what the output of that tool was. You have to go back to the last viewer. And then it can be a little buggy, but it's free. So the Wikipedia page or the wiki on GitHub is the go-to place for kind of the manual, as well as our website and myself or Nancy. All right, one of the other ones we use a lot in our lab is TerraSolid. I don't have a lot of personal experience with this, but it's, I think, the most robust that I've talked about so far in terms of tools, classification, batch processing. It's set up as a series of modules, so you pay for what you need. And it's got great QA, QC functionalities, like in TerraMatch, where you align point clouds. So if you had an older LiDAR data set that you wanted to compare a newer one to, this would be great for that. And if your organization uses Bentley's MicroStation for other civil engineering type aspects, this is integrated directly. So the cons are, it's not free. You need to purchase it. I put the cost here because they posted on their website. The cost might be different for your organization, but just as a relative sense, $5,600 to purchase the software, or on the cheap side, $565 for a 1-year subscription to the light version. However, you do need to be proficient in and have access to Bentley MicroStation, which I know is expensive. I think it's about $3,000 a year. But very robust. So another one that I know is popular is Global Mapper. Global Mapper has some built-in LiDAR functions like a viewer, but you then purchase this extra LiDAR module to get all the LiDAR algorithms. Tons of different kinds of data you can work with in Global Mapper. I think it's neat that the LiDAR module also can do structure from motion. And it has, from what I can tell, lots of tools on statistics, filtering, classification, and feature extraction, which is great. It looks like they posted on their website. It's a little more affordable than TerraSolid. One disadvantage I see is that it's not LiDAR specific, so it's again another GIS piece of software. All right, Mars is also worth a mention. The viewer is free, and they also have a 30-day trial of their Explorer. It's standalone for LiDAR or remote sensing data. You can purchase different tiers according to your needs. It has batch processing capabilities and multi-threading and all that. They advertise 31 filtering algorithms. I don't know how that compares with other ones, but 20 export formats is a lot compared to some other software. And so if you need intercompatibility with different software, this might be worth looking into. They post on their website their price, and it ranges from 5,000 to 12,000, depending on the level. So now the free stuff, which is, I think, the best. CloudCompare is kind of the workhorse around our lab in terms of just opening up the data to see what it looks like and do some initial kind of evaluation. It's open source. The tools, I think, are pretty easy and straightforward. It was originally designed, obviously, to compare clouds, but you can calculate volumes, distances between point clouds or meshes. It's great at visualizing, I think, and basically it can do meshing, filtering, aligning, and some more advanced processing, but those are open source kind of plugins. So use at your own risk, research yourself, I suppose. So some of the cons are limited analysis capabilities, and it can kind of choke sometimes on large files. I would highly recommend, if you have LiDAR data that you're interested in, use CloudCompare first to open it up and just look at some of the tiles. Also worth mention is Last Tools. It's free, kind of. It's open source, partially. It's standalone, which I think is a good plus, or it can be a toolbox in Arc, a toolbox in QGIS, or an ERDAS Imagine. And it's really flexible. There's a GUI for all of the tools over here on the side. And so you can run the GUI, or you can run each tool in its own GUI, or you can run any of the tools from the command line. So it's good for batch processing, and the tools, I think, are more robust in handling LiDAR data that might not have all of the metadata, or might give other software some difficulties. So the cons, I said it's kind of free. The free version, if you have too many points, it starts to degrade the precision. And part of it's open source, part of it is not. And the GUI is kind of buggy, so the command line is better. Zach Lifton told me about Displaz, which I hadn't heard of before, but is pretty slick. It is extremely fast, and it loads all of the points. You can see here, it loaded all 20 million points in 2 seconds. It's mostly just for visualization, so it uses the OpenGL library, and you can use that in whatever language you're comfortable with to really control how this point cloud is displayed. So if you wanted to present it to somebody, or kind of really get into the point cloud, I guess, this might be worth looking into. Some of the drawbacks, you need coding experience, and it's really only for displaying point clouds. clouds from what I can tell. So a shout out to some code-based things. This is mostly what we use here in the lab after CloudCompare and TerraSolid a little bit. But for analysis, they're just matrices. So if you want to really be able to finally control the parameters, coding is kind of the way to go, I think. R is free. We use Lidar and RGL. Python, I'm not sure anybody in our lab here has used it, but it seems incredibly robust, and I think the way to go. I put a couple of courses here that are free, kind of go at your own pace courses that look pretty great. C or C++, if you're working with a lot of data and need really precise control of the memory, I think that's the way to go. But Displaz is now PDAL for Python. And then MATLAB, you can use just MATLAB, or there's a Topo toolbox. MATLAB, of course, is not free, but I wanted to put it here just with the other code-based resources. So honorable mentions and other lists of software. In the interest of keeping it short, I just wanted to list kind of other software that might be worth knowing about. EasyLAS is an ESRI standalone little exe to convert between LAS and LAS, and you can batch process. So if you're trying to share Lidar or archive it, this is a good free tool. Grass has Lidar modules in addition to like the Rapid Lasso LAS tools that integrates. Erdas Imagine is another big remote sensing software. QTModeler, I know, is a big one. The viewer for Lidar is free. Unidem is this new paid Windows app that looks pretty simple and straightforward, and I think is reasonably affordable. If your organization uses Autodesk products, Recap can do Lidar, but it also does structural motion, which is neat. And then Bentley Point Tools is Bentley's kind of point cloud viewer. And so if your organization uses Bentley, that might be worth looking into. And then opentopography.org, I'm sure you're all familiar with. They have a list of software and tools. And then in case you're not aware, if you find a LiDAR data set on OpenTopography and want to download it, you can also choose at that time to make some raster products that you download as well, or in addition to. This laser scanning forum is kind of a discussion forum, and they have a discussion section for each of like 30 different LiDAR software. So that's a good place to go if you have questions on specific LiDAR software that I didn't discuss here. And then these last two ones are just some lists of some LiDAR tools. Anyway, keeping it short, hopefully sweet, and hopefully moderately informative. I'll take any questions either in the chat or by audio. Thank you. Any questions? No questions? Well, if no questions, I'll email this out to you. Let me know if you have any specific questions or if you'd like any follow-up. I had a lot of fun looking into all these different software. It really seems like there's as much tailoring to your industry or area of expertise as you want. Good free stuff, lots of good paid stuff. And if you try any of these other new software, please let me know. I'd like to learn more about them and hear how they go. And so with that, I think I will wrap it up. Thanks, everyone.